All right, let's get started. My name is Amira and I work at Consumer Reports. And I am really excited to be here today to talk to you about these tricky dark patterns. And I am accompanied by quite the crew that I'd love to introduce you to. So, my wonderful and very talented co host, Sage, you want to come say hello? Tell us a little bit about what you do and about the organization you're coming in from today.
Thank you, Amira, and hi, everybody. I couldn't see your face, but I'm imagining everyone with a smiley face and or curious face, or even maybe coming with complaints because we're talking about dark patterns. A little bit about myself. I am Sage Cheng. I am from Brooklyn, New York. And very much appreciated the opportunity to talk to everybody today on dark patterns. I work at Access Now, which is an international organization working on digital human rights. So basically human rights, but online. It varies from privacy to freedom of expression to digital security. And also to connectivity and equal access, and also like a business and human rights in a large scale. I myself is a UX and design specialist. So I do help our team to run a lot of advocacy campaigns. So by heart, I am also a campaigner, but by training, I am a designer specialized on UX and UI, which is short for user experience and user interface. Probably some buzzwords you've been hearing a lot. That is basically talking about if you're visiting a website, if you're using an app, if you're using any digital product or platform, the interface you're seeing, a lot of them will be conducted by the designers or the design team or product team. But it's also involving all the engineers and policy team. So there's a lot of decision makers in designing those interfaces. Just a little bit inside information on that. So today we're going to talk about dark patterns. I'm very excited about the opportunity and giving back the mic to Amira.
Thank you, Sage. Everyone now should attest to the fact that we have some talent with us today to talk about this important topic. And I said we have many people here in our crew. So Kimberly and Alan, also from Consumer Reports, are going to be here helping out in different roles, and I will talk about that in a second. But Kimberly, Alan, do you want to say a quick hello to the audience?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kimberly. Let me put my camera on real quick. Nice to see you all, or nice to imagine seeing you all. I'll be in the chat running the polls, and I've got the closed caption set up too for those of you that want to use that. Welcome.
Hey friends, Alan Smith here from Brooklyn. Actually just a few blocks from Sage. We just learned that recently. We're neighbors and didn't know it until this webinar. And I will be mostly in the question and answer session today. And I'm really thrilled to see all of you and thrilled to see the people who have been to a couple digital wellness webinars before, starting to see some familiar names. So thank you for coming and thank you for coming back.
Exactly. Okay, we've got a packed agenda, so I'm going to quickly roll on to the agenda to share with you what we're going to go through today. I know many of you are here to understand what are dark patterns, so we're really going to go through what are the types that we're seeing, some common examples, and then we'll get into the how to avoid them, talk about some cool projects that Consumer Reports and Access Now are working on together with many other organizations, and we'll do some questions and a quick wrap up. And I just want to go through housekeeping really quickly. I do want to preface that this is supposed to be an introduction to what dark patterns are. We know this is very new for a lot of people, so we're just trying to give you that basic information about how to spot them and increase that level of awareness. And we have said the word acronyms already. Acronyms are definitely going to come up, but we are going to try our best to distill it down to make it sense in the layman terms that we can and make sure we're not over speaking over anyone. We have a lot of different people, different skill sets here and different levels of knowledge. So some kindness and empathy to know that we are trying to make this as inclusive with our language as possible. And a quick heads up, we are recording to share so that we can send this out to everyone afterwards. You get a copy of the recording and any of the resources we talked about. And then as Kimberly mentioned, we have closed captioning. And the ways we would love for you to engage with us today are in the Q&A and the chat. So Alan will be hanging in the Q&A to help answer questions, and we will have a designated time at the end to talk through questions. And Kimberly will be in the chat, being able to answer comments, up-level things to us, and so forth. And just a pro tip, don't forget to check out our past webinars. We'll drop a link in the chat so that you can see past evolutions of what we've done on digital wellness. And you can also share them with others who might want to stay tuned on programming in the future. Oh, before I head to this next slide, I do want to do one quick groundkeeping level setting for us all. I do want to make sure that we all know that we are here to act as participants and engage and collaborate. And the goal is not for us always to agree, it's for us to get a deeper understanding for each other. And so using words like I and talking from our personal experience, refraining from personal attacks, and invading someone else with your own personal spin on things will be really helpful for us to create inclusive and equitable community. And we want to stick true to these ground rules. And we also want to preface that there will be audio and technical issues. This is the age we're living in, and they will be inevitable. But if we can agree to be supportive and understanding when these issues arise, we, myself personally, would be very appreciative of that. And just be a little bit kind to all of your fellow co-hosts and panelists. So attending this webinar, you are agreeing to these ground rules. And if you don't adhere to the ground rules, we do have permission to either ask you to refrain from doing it or to kick you out if necessary, which I hope it never comes to. Okay, done with all the housekeeping. We are here to talk about dark patterns. So dark patterns are the tactics that are used in websites, apps, and other interfaces. Interfaces being IoT, smart cars, other sorts of things that are becoming technology driven. And they are designs to persuade you to do things you probably wouldn't do. And so I really want to break this down because we are online technically in so many capacities every day, and organizations are gathering this data constantly. And what they're doing is studying this data to be able to manipulate your behavior so that you are giving up the things that you might not want to give up, so that they're able to sometimes meet their business requirements and standards and bottom lines. And they're taking advantage of the fact that we have these built-in cultural behaviors based on the fact that we're tired of reading long consent forms or long processes or others. And they are going to take advantage of the fact that, they'll make the page so that we ignore the things that we should be reading so that we do the things that they might want to do. And this is a little bit of a tricky concept. It was only created, dark patterns, the term was only coined in 2010. But it is something that has become so increasingly around us that if you go into your inbox right now, I promise you will be able to spot them, at least by the end of this call, spot many of them in your inbox. But this term dark patterns has been coming up a lot more recently. And I don't know if you're like me, you're tuning into the news. I saw CBS have a feature on this last week. I saw a bunch of news articles recently published around dark patterns in the past couple months. And so I want to talk this through a little bit. Sage, why is now an important time to be talking about dark patterns, and why are we hearing so much more about them right now?
Yeah, sure. Indeed, dark pattern was almost like a coined as a term like nearly 10 years ago, and it existed much longer before that. So why now? Why today? Because one is inevitably, like, everybody's life is going online, especially like with pandemic and even without pandemic, because of the internet and also the internet information technologies we rely on in these days. If you probably hear a lot about like big data, online tracking, all of those buzzwords, all of those personal informations, our daily lives, our daily activities are very very much connected with the internet. And even with people who traditionally don't have the access to the internet that other communities may have already enjoyed for a long time, like more and more people are getting online in their unique ways. That actually created a whole new avenue for big companies to deploy more dark patterns. And I want to talk about like why it's important, because dark pattern really brings harm to individual consumers, like all of us as people. And these harm is actually also accumulating with today. We are getting more connected. We're using more technologies. We're all like using our phones, using our computers, or maybe a smart TV that you probably were using, or a smart car we're using. Like all of those interfaces, they are designed in a way to achieve the company's goals. And what are companies' goals? Like, what do they want? So they want anything they can capitalize. Obviously, it's doing business. I do business. I want money, and anything I can capitalize on, I would definitely go for it. So what are those things? Well, first is money, like literally, and second is personal data. So like since 2017, The Economist published a set of reports basically claiming that personal data, the value of personal data has surpassed oil, like a petrol. So the value of personal data is actually like usually petrol as a basic value for commodities, but today's world, we're actually using personal data as a basic unit to value commodities. So that's a very interesting transformation. As you can see, like personal data has become more and more valuable and become a very a personal assets that with a lot of value that we don't have control over. Because of all of these technologies, they can sneak into different ways to get your personal data. And dark pattern is a common tactic used for that. So what is dark pattern? As Amira just said, like it's basically a tactic used in the interface designs to persuade you, to convince you to do things you don't want to do, or to get things you don't want to give without your knowledge or consciousness. And the harms, yes.
Sorry, no,
go
I
ahead.
don't mean to interrupt, but what do we mean by interface design? Because I think that might go over some people's heads and we might not know what is interface.
Yes, thank you for that. So interface is, if you look at your phone, the screen on your phone, the apps, that is the interface. Any button, any language, any action item on the web page or on the app that you see, that's part of the interface. So all of these things are trying to get you to do something. So you visit a website, you see some information. The website may ask you like, contact us. That's an action. The website may have, if you go to an e-commerce website, you buy things. The website wants you to buy things. Like click this to buy, I don't know, a dress. That's an action. So that's websites and apps. And if you go to your, I don't know, if you have a smart TV or if you have, let's say like you have some automobile, if your car has a screen, usually like probably it's used for GPS, but nowadays you see more and more menus on it, and that is also an interface. So all of these interface, they're designed by the product team, and the product team has ways to leverage those designs to get money or information or trying to manipulate your behavior and like convince you to do something that you don't want to do and claim that that's what you wanted to do. So that's the problem with dark pattern. And if you look at the harms that dark patterns can cause, obviously, like the frustration is the first thing. And a lot of people may have experienced losing money, but also like a more dubiously like losing privacy or gain mental burden. And all of those things are actually like a very tangible harm that has been caused by the dark patterns, but has not yet recognized very commonly as a major problem with today's internet economies. So losing money, for instance, like if you in your checkout from an e-commerce website, you may be without seeing like there's some items added to your cart, sneaking things you don't want into the things, and if you miss it, you end up paying for it. That's losing money. And if you subscribe to something and it says like a 7-day free trial, afterwards you will be charged a monthly fee of like $49.99, and you can cancel, but the cancel is really, really hard to do, and that's losing money. Losing privacy obviously is a lot of time when you check out from a website, it always asks for your email as if like it tries to contact you, but also there's this very small term like you agree to receive all the promotions and direct marketing emails from them, and that's like losing privacy. You get spammed from those services. And finally, obviously, like gaining mental burden. I don't know about you, I got constantly, as a designer, I got constantly frustrated. And like, you know, like in doing my own website, I buy domains from GoDaddy. GoDaddy is very famous for sneaking everything into your cart. And before I can check out, I have to constantly uncheck and check and check. And that's a lot of burden already. And let alone like if you lose a large amount of money, or if you lose privacy, because there's a huge problem with companies not being able to keep your data safe. So you might hear from the news that there's a lot of data leaks, like LinkedIn had a big lawsuit where they lost and had to actually pay each LinkedIn user some money to compensate for the data leak. So like you end up being like facing identity theft or other digital threats because the company collected data from you without your consent, and they fail to protect your data. So like these are all the harms. And I know that you probably feel the harm like with a lot of firsthand experiences, but dark pattern is the kind of thing like we don't know how to categorize them, but when we see the categorization, it makes sense immediately. So let's get into the types.
Let's get into these cats so we can like think about them, because there are a lot of dark patterns to cover.
So darkpatterns.org is the organization and website that very brilliantly classified different types of dark patterns, trying to like give a better sense of dark patterns. And they've been there for like almost 10 years. Feel free to visit the darkpattern.org. I'll put the link here. So they provided a very pretty good classification or categorization of different dark patterns that today is still useful for all of us. And I will go through them quickly with some examples. The first thing is obviously like trick questions. It's, for instance, they ask you like, do you want to subscribe? And two options. It says, I do want to subscribe. And the other is, I do not want to subscribe. Well, my expression is pretty lame, but there's some like tricky questions. Like when you are given two options, they seems to mean opposite things, but they actually mean the same thing. Or a question that seems to be asking you for one thing, whereas it actually asks you for another thing. That's tricking you into giving consent to either giving out your data or money. And then the second one is sneak into basket, which I refer to a lot just now, like sneaking items into your cart when you check out. And I have also examples afterwards. And the third term is called roach motel, which I personally really like this term because it's basically saying like it creates a very easy way for you to get in. but there's no way to get out. For instance, like online dating apps or websites, it's very easy for me to create a account and just start browsing and seeing like people I want to match with. But if I want to delete my account, like several years ago, it was impossible for me to delete my account or delete my data. I remember the time when I had to call OkCupid for 3 times, and they still said that I cannot delete my account, and they kept my data. So they declared rights. Luckily, like over the years, through different advocacy efforts and also policy changes, reframes, those online dating websites, we see some progress on that, but we still see the pattern of roach motel a lot throughout all kinds of services. Another example we will mention later in the example slides. And then the next one is privacy zackering, and is, as you can tell, like the term is coming from Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, and it's playing on these concept, I have nothing to hide myth. So it's trying to tell you like, well, you don't really, like those things are not really private to you, like you should share it. It's like encouraging you to share information more than you want to do. And it's like, if you're using Facebook or social media, you will probably know what I mean. Like when you are getting on a new account, you already like it asks you all of your contacts, and it tries to match you with your contact who also have the same account number accounts, and also like have your activities public by default, unless you want to absolutely want it to be private. And it also like comes, if you absolutely want it to be private, sometimes it will come with another type of dark pattern, which is confirm shaming in the next slide. Sorry, I'm jumping around. So like it will ask you, do you really want to keep this private? Do you really want to keep this to yourself? Or like when you are trying to when you try to delete your account, you will say like, do you really want to leave us? It's so sad to see you go. Like these kind of trying to be your friend, or trying to convince you to do something, like that's a confirmed shaming. It's another type of dark patterns. Another dark pattern is also very commonly seen on the e-commerce website, which is making the price comparison super difficult, which is called price comparison prevention. So like item A would be priced with units, I don't know, like pounds, and item B will be, the pricing unit will be bottles. There's no way to compare which one is cheaper, so that it can make more money in that way. And then another one would be the misdirection. Meaning like if you click a button thinking you're going to check out, actually not, it takes you to like more to see, like something like that would be a misdirection. Or like if you want to see more things where it asks you to subscribe, that's another misdirection. Can you go to the slide 2? And then a few other different categorizations, like a hidden cost. Hidden cost is commonly seen like if you, like me, gave up on making food myself, ordering a lot, sorry, shamefully, making a lot of takeout food. I use a lot of Uber Eats or GoDash, those apps, and they have a lot of hidden costs. When you want to check out, you see a simple item that says fee, but if you click the fee, like there's a small question mark next to the fee, and you click on it, and you will see a whole bunch of things that doesn't make sense, but it's costing you money, and you would be asking why, but there's no answer to that. That's a hidden cost. Another type would be bait and switch. For instance, like you want to do something and you click it, it's sort of like sometimes it's like the misdirection. It tries to lure you into do one thing, but it actually ask you to do another things. Certain types of these things will be seen, for instance, like tax filing. TurboTax is the app, like a free tax filing tool, and it has a lot of bait and switch to say like file the tax for free, and if you click it, there's a whole bunch of price chart, and you're like, what is this price chart? So it's really hard to actually do free tax filing with TurboTax because of those bait and switch. And confirm shaming, I just said in the previous example. Obviously, there's also disguised ads. These probably more commonly were like a more traditional, as it's usually used in print ads or TV ads long before the internet. And you can probably get more examples that I can do, like all those kinds of disguised languages, vague languages, et cetera, et cetera. And also like a forced continuity. Like that means like when you try to finish doing something on the website with one click, instead of one click, you have to actually click and click and click and click and click to finish the whole process, where you have to do a bunch of things they ask you to do before you can finish the process. That's a forced continuity. And also like the friend spam is asking you or a personal confirmation, so it can spam your inbox, spam your text. If you give them phone numbers, they may even spam your a message box. So let's get into some examples. We can walk through these examples to see the actual, like the visuals of these types of dark patterns.
Yes, thank you, Sage, for just breaking that down, because that is a lot of info and really goes through the gambit of like dark patterns, how they exist. And I know you've been busy, but in the chat, there is so many nods of people saying, yes, we've heard this, we've seen it, and adding their own examples already. And so we know that this is everywhere. And it's kind of confirming all the things that we kind of thought were fishy, we saw, and now we're like, oh yes, there's a name for it. So Sage said, we're going to jump into some examples now that you've kind of heard a little bit about what they are and what are the names for them. So I'm going to throw up this first one from LinkedIn. And if you have an idea of what type of dark pattern this is, please do drop it into the chat, because this is a time to test your knowledge of what you just learned, but to also show you how they are sneakily living in the wild, as I say. So yeah, I appreciate the people that are jumping in. Thank you. Just to give some context, when you start new accounts, many of the products often ask you to insert extra info. And this particular example on LinkedIn, which I know is a platform many people use, has come under heavy scrutiny many times over again as being a rampant dark pattern, because when you go to start your account, the first thing they're going to ask you is to import your friends list. And so some people have already mentioned this in here. There are multiple dark patterns in use, and one is the confirm shaming. So instead of just clicking skip, it actually prompts you again. So it kind of shames you into thinking, are you doing something wrong? Are you potentially like not doing the right thing, that it's asking you again? And so that is something that this is guilty of. The other thing that's come up that you have mentioned is friend spam. So it's taking all of this data from you that you don't actually have to give, you don't need to give, and it's asking you to input it again. And particular to dark patterns, LinkedIn has come under some issues, because not only would they do this, even if you press skip, they actually would send you emails afterwards as well. And what is really making it a dark pattern is there's no option to say no. So ideally, if you don't want to import this now, you probably don't want to do it in the future, but they won't give you that opportunity to just say, no, stop asking me. They leave the door open for them to come after and ask you again, and kind of encourage you through that confirm shaming and other types of ways. And so these are all the clear examples of dark patterns that are like sneakishly embedded. But the part that actually makes me a little bit nervous that we don't talk about as often is there is no information on this page as to how LinkedIn is going to use the data of your contacts. once you import it. And so that to me is another facet of dark patterns, is just taking data without sharing it or sharing the security and privacy around your context list. And so not only are you inputting your info and giving consent, but you're giving consent for a whole bunch of people now to have their info into LinkedIn. And so that is like a clear example that you've all mastered by now. The next one, and I know some of you might have to enlarge in your screen for this to see clearly, is another favorite example I love to use from Amazon. So I know it's a little bit like you got to read through the different screens on this one, but are you able to identify which dark pattern that this is? And I'll give you a hint. Sage said it was her favorite of the terms, of the names for a dark pattern. I will keep going, and let's see if it clicks as we go through it. So if you've ever opened an account and it being as easy as saying yes, oh, it's all coming through now to everyone. If you've ever opened an account and you've said, oh, I just want to do this, I'll add my email and I'm registered. That takes about 2 easy, simple steps. For certain organizations, try closing an account after you've opened it. It is indeed called a roach motel dark pattern, because to get out of it, you actually have to navigate through like 10 million different steps to get out and actually close the thing that took you about 20 seconds to start. And so Amazon here, if this is specific to the Prime account, if you want to close your account, you would most likely go to My Account Settings. And from there, you'd probably go to More About Your Account Settings. And from there, it should be an easy click that says Close Your Account. But instead, they give you an information that says About Closing Your Account, which talks all the reasons about why you should not close your account. And in fact, if we were to continue this series of screenshots, you would see that you actually cannot close your account even when you click on About Closing Your Account. So what they have done is a classic roach motel where they have buried the ability to close your account so far down that users will not close their accounts. And in reality, if you have ever tried this, and even though I know you might not want to close your Amazon Prime account, but just give it a try to see the navigation so you can get familiar with dark patterns. But you actually have to contact a representative either through chat or phone to close your account. And even then, they're going to give you a lot of lists as to why you shouldn't close your account. So this thing is often going to take you a lot longer than it should. And that is a privilege to be able to take the time to go through that chat, to go through the call. And many people are going to give up. So that is another clear dark pattern. And the third example we have for you is one that I know so many people have felt so strongly in the past. Sage, let us know about this one.
Yeah, thanks, Amira. As you can see from the 2 examples Amira just showed, like dark patterns, it's tricky because it doesn't come in one type of tactics. We introduced probably 12 different tactics of dark patterns. They usually come in hybrid. So it's wave after wave of attacks. It's really hard for individuals to identify and recognize all of them, let alone take action to combat against it. So if you, I myself, I don't drive, big confession, but I do interact with a lot of renting car apps. And one thing that I found from renting car, or like a hotel booking or a flight booking, any business that involves with a term they call it dynamic pricing, which means in the back end, there's an algorithm to decide the price in different times. This is a dynamic pricing. In any business that involves dynamic pricing, usually rental or booking business, they will introduce all hybrids, different kinds of dark patterns to make sure you fall for the highest price they want. For instance, like if you go to the Hertz website, and if you're trying to look for a car to book, the first thing you see is not the result of the cars. The first thing you see is a countdown clock. And that countdown clock is like, you have 13 minutes we can only lock this price for you for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, the price may go up. It creates this delusion for you and creates the rush for you to act on it. So you can neglect all the sneaky things it's trying to do through in the process later. But usually, like these countdown clocks, they don't really match with the algorithm. Or sometimes, like they don't really. They are just simply a countdown clocks. There's no way, there's no transparency for you to know. Sometimes even the business owner, they would not know like if the price will go up or go down. So that countdown clock is obviously like a very useless thing here. The only purpose for it to be there is to create a rush for you, so you don't look at things carefully in the later process. And now you have this countdown, your rush into the next one, and you want to see like, okay, I booked for like a May the 22nd to May the 24th, which is like a pretty much like a 2 full days. And I want to see like how much it does cost me. And in the first choice, it shows the car, and it shows the car as the Ford Focus. But it's a small sedan, but it doesn't tell you like, it has a very tiny thing to say like or similar. And usually like sometimes you go to the actual parking lot and you will see a different car, and that's when like this is another sneaky attack and also like a dark pattern. This is like a misdirection. Give you a very big image of a Ford Focus. You believe that you're booking a Ford Focus, but it may be other cars. And I see that it's cost $199 a day. And I go to the next step, and estimated total is like 562. I was like, what? How come? And it shows an extra hour at $67. I did not know about this extra hour. I thought it was the price was booked by day, and now it's getting an extra hour. Is not only the hidden costs or sneaky items, but also like really like creating a price comparison hindrance for you. And then after you go through all of these quite a I would say like traumatizing process, and try to, okay, I'm done with this. I just want a car. I don't care anymore. I want to like book this car. And at the end of it, after you put all of your driver's information, it gives you like a very small thing. It says like, yes, I want to receive promotional materials for that. And it's pre-checked. So you have to take extra effort to uncheck it if you don't want your inbox to be spammed with Hertz email. And this is like why you always found, why did this thing send me emails? That's probably because you were attacked by this kind of forced consent stuff. And they have this whole process, as you can see, is a very, very nicely done sneaky attack with all the kinds of dark patterns. So I think we should go to the question. I saw a lot of questions.
We should go to some polls. And yes, I have had car booking traumatization. And so that is definitely something that I felt in the past. So thank you, Sage, for saying it. We have the first poll question up, which is, have you experienced a dark pattern online? And the reason why I wanted to put this out there was because many of you were joining being like, I don't know what a dark pattern is. I don't know if this is classifying as it. I don't know if I've experienced it. And so I want to give about like 10 more seconds for people to share where they are now based on what we've shared and what is classified as a dark pattern. So we can get an understanding of like how we are shifting with the awareness and understanding that we've already learned. And if you can't see the polls, do not worry. If you're watching us later, I will share out the info that'll say all the ways people voted so that you can experience it. So feel free to answer in your head. We have just completed. Okay, so 90% of you said that you have experienced a dark pattern, which is quite high. And so we know that this is a problem that is experienced by just that many people. About 1% of you said you have not experienced a dark pattern. And 8% of you said, I'm still not sure. And that's okay. The point is we're having this discussion to keep talking and learning about this so that we can be more aware when we're online. And with that, I'm going to quickly flip to the second poll question. This one's a little bit more meatier. So in terms of like the new awareness of policies and states that are looking at dark patterns, California has recently implemented a law that cracks down on sites using which dark pattern. And so here are three things. It's either using confusing language like double negatives. We've all seen the do not sell my personal info, or don't not send my personal info, forcing users to click through or listen to reasons why they should not submit a request to opt out before confirming their request. You all know that's so much of confirm shaming now. Or requiring users to search or scroll through the text of a privacy policy or similar document or web page to locate the mechanism for submitting a request to opt out. And if you are all of the above, drop that in. Okay, it is a lengthy one, so thanks for listening and reading along. We're going to stop the poll now, but it is in fact all of the above. So 81% of you did share that you agree that it is all of them. In California, under CCPA, which we know is the California Consumer Protection Act, is enforcing regulation that was implemented to make it even easier for users wanting to control their personal information, and individuals can now have an easier time exercising their right to data privacy if they so choose. So while California has gone about implementing this one facet of CCPA, what we're looking to is a lot more regulation and policy that really limits the control of corporations and organizations when they do these type of acts, so that users cannot be tricked into doing things and they're presented with clear options and guidelines. Okay, I'm going to scroll through quickly to the next slide because there's some things that I just want to focus on before we head into questions. And I know you've all been dropping some great questions in, so keep up that work. But I do want to stop here, just talk about the ethical parts, because often when I have conversations about dark patterns, people are like, okay, what's so bad about good design? You know, companies use them all the time to make us engage, to make sure we follow through, that we can seamlessly go through a product, and they're just doing their job. If they didn't have good design, no one would use them at all. And so there is this like ethical question about how people are using dark patterns to actually do these sort of things in light of all the other designs that they might have to do that align with their business goals. And so this concept called ethical design has come up to have more social responsibility of designers and researchers. And I'm not going to go into ethical design so much because that's its own topic. But what I do want to do is just say there are three things as a designer and a producer of this that are important to bring up and talk about, but also for you as an end user to think about ethically when looking at products and companies, because sometimes these designs are not intentionally dark patterns, but they're actually just trying to wayfind you through, and sometimes they are. And so, you know, for a designer or for yourself, really focus on the intent of the design. Is it meant to trick you, or is it meant to just get you through and help streamline the process and make it easier for you? So thinking through that ethical dilemma will help you realize more often than not when it is actually quite intentionally making you do something you would not do. And then making sure users are presented with clear options. Does the site or app allow you the ability to say no or disclose information about what it's doing? And then as well, does it provide clear instructions on how the data is used? So do they tell you what they're going to collect from you? And do they say this in simple language that doesn't include jargon and a whole bunch of acronyms? Are they making sure that you as a user fully understand what's happening and that this is as clear to the audience as possible? And so when thinking about design, it does involve a lot of these conversations. And in dark patterns, this conversation has gone back quite many times back and forth. And so there are some arguments to say we need good design, We just need it ethically used with the right intentions so that users know what's happening and can use things to their advantage. And so those are the things I do really want to call out as we think about this going forward. And Sage, take us through how we spot these things now that 90% of us and more have experienced a dark pattern.
Yeah, sure. I also want to just quickly add one point to what Amira just said. Coming, like, I am a designer, so I'm coming from a designer perspective. And I want to further elaborate on like why it's very important to voice out your the harm you received from dark patterns, and also try to speak up, create more public discourses on dark patterns. Because surely a policy framework or policy progress reframe would definitely help, but in the end, at the end of the day, like, dark pattern is part of a corporate culture. We are trying to a corporate culture, a corporate norm we're trying to shift. And it's really hard to shift a culture, to shift a norm. Only simply policy changes or tag changes them alone cannot make any difference. But if we all voice out, and if as end users, like, we voice out more and bring more to the public attention, to the industry attention, to make sure that the corporate gets the consequences, face the consequences for the tactics, these kind of dark patterns they do, that's gonna help shift the norm and shift the culture of these kind of designs. So as individual, like, how do we identify those dark patterns, and how do we bring more discussions about it? How do we bring more press or public attention to it? Obviously, like, you have learned a lot of different types and different signs that represents those types of attacks, but it's quickly like three different triggers or three different flags that you can see. One is a very bewildering language, labels or buttons. For instance, like, commonly, like, green means go, red means no. Like, this kind of color references is across culture. And so sometimes it will give you green in the button it wants you to click, whereas you may actually want to click the button that is red, that it doesn't want you to click. So for instance, or the vice versa, like, if you're playing, let's say, like phone games, video games or phone games, especially phone games, there's all of these fake different turn off button with the X, and you click each of them takes you to an advertisement. And the actual like a button, like, this is a bewildering labels and bewildering language, as Amira said, like a double negative or the false options, things like that. And the second is crowded visuals, very long list, or like a very crowded visuals, a lot of different elements all together, packed on the interface, on the website, on the app. There's no space, no room for you to breathe, to look through carefully, or there's no time for you. Like I said, there's a countdown, a huge countdown clock on top of everything, and making it really hard to go through everything you want to learn. And or extra steps, those are also alarming signs for dark patterns you may have encountered. And then the third biggest sign is a confusing navigation. A confusing navigation could be like you want to click to the click A to go to B, but A actually takes you to C, or like you go to C, you want to go back to A, and you go to D instead. Things of confusing navigation, or different menus. You can see different menus on the website, and each different menus is like, which one is the primary menu? Like, if you use Amazon, like, you probably feel what I feel. Like, there's a lot of different menus. Sometimes it's really hard to get to the custom services because they hide behind different menus. So these are the simple flags that you can use to identify the patterns. And it's also very equally important to publish those and they use the name and shame strategy to bring the public advocacy against those dark patterns, which will, I'll turn the mic back to Amira about the actions.
Thanks, Sage. Okay, we got you riled up about dark patterns. You've experienced them, you know how to spot them. So what do we do now? Well, the first thing is you can file a complaint. So FCC has recently had a workshop and conversation around how to control dark patterns and who they're affecting and how they affect users. And so that is part of the conversation, but they are looking to also hear from you as users as to what there is. So you can file a complaint online and we'll drop the link in the chat and send it to those later. And you can also submit a comment to the FTC until the end of May. And so those are two very concrete actionable steps you can take as an individual. And then the second is to be more critical online. So once you know more about dark patterns, you can get better at actually avoiding them. So some tips are like review the permissions to remove dark data sharing options or unchecked boxes that enroll you in newsletters, or read descriptions for settings. I love sharing with people that like once you know about them, go into your inbox and just take a look at some of the newsletters. Check out the unsubscribe, see how small they might be, what color they might be. Go through these things so you can just get better at spotting them and being a little bit more critical online. And then the last part is submit a dark pattern. I know you're all excited because you're like, well, is Consumer Reports doing anything about this now that we all know? Well, in fact, we are doing some work with some very talented, wonderful other organizations, including Access Now, where we have launched the Dark Patterns TIPLINE. And so the TIPLINE is an online platform, and it's led by a team of designers, academic research, legal experts, policy specialists, and advocacy-minded individuals. And we came together to really collect dark patterns to better understand how technology is exploiting people and actually promote for better policy reform as an effect that can impact the lives of individuals going forward as it relates to dark patterns. And so we've grounded this work in highlighting the examples from real life people. And so that includes all of you. And what our ask is to you all who have shared so many dark patterns on this call today is to actually go on and submit and go through the site and walk through it and actually give us a feel for what you're experiencing so we can talk about this and share those more openly with others. And Sage, go through a little bit more about the objectives would be great. And then actually like, how is this all going to come fruition? Why is this important? I mean, and what are like some of the, we're not going to do a screen share right now because I know we're short on time, but you know, just really quickly, why is it important to use this site to look through harms and the sightings in others?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So this site was created simply because a bunch of UX designers or people wearing mixed hats feel, you know, the role of UX designers, again, user experience designers, sort of like designing people's experiences. Our goal is to make people's life easier, is to make tools usable and useful. So like the interface should be designed to be clear and to be creating little trouble for people to act on things they do want to act on as possible. The current, so like the current filing system or publishing system or for dark patterns, there are a lot of them. As you can see, like you can file a complaint to FTC, or you can and also like in the Europe experiences, you can file a complaint under the local data authority under the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation law in the European market. But it's really hard to follow the steps or like submit the things you think would help. So this website is created to help people identifying what would be the most important things to submit, or like what would be the most important information to report regarding those dark patterns, so that at the end of this project, there will be more like research output from all the samples collected to better help, like either help like the regulators or legislators to better understanding and creating laws or regulations that makes more sense to help the industry to shift the culture, or for individuals to understand more about dark patterns, to be easier to identify them on their daily basis, and also like creating a set of tactics. You know, like the tactics is to fight you. You got to have strategies and tactics to fight back. So we are also trying to see like all of those dark patterns. Is there any way to like create a simple toolkit, like, or create some sort of strategies to fight back? So all of these examples submitted through the dark pattern TIPLINE project will serve all of those goals, to
Yes.
raise the awareness and share the value of the public voices, your voices, my voices, everyone's, like, you know, the grassroots voices, and also like in the end make better, more impact either on the regulator level or on the culture shifting business level.
Thank you so much, Sage. And I know we're almost at time, and I want to share some actions before we go. And we've been really keeping up with the questions, the Q&A. But one thing in particular that's come up for a lot of people in the questions I want to quickly answer before we go is cookies. A lot of people are asking, are cookies a form of dark pattern? Do you want to take that in 30 seconds or less? Oh, Sage, I think you're on mute. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I missed your last question.
So people are just curious as to whether cookies are a form of dark pattern.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was looking at one of the questions, totally drifted away. Yes, cookies, there are a lot of dark patterns in the cookie bars. So as you probably have seen, there's more and more websites started using a bar when you visit them at the bottom of the site or on top of the site, saying like, there's tracking cookies. Do you want to activate or do you want to deactivate? And those are all because of GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation from Europe. And they are regulating the jurisdiction for that law is pretty wide. So a lot of international business are affected. As a result, every business that are operating that has a European market has to comply with GDPR. But there's a lot of way to sneak back the trackings they want. So obviously, like when you visit a website, the devices you're using, the visiting time, or what you did on the website, or even some sort of like your location, your location information, or sometimes even more information can be extracted from your visit to a website, and those are extracted through different ways, but cookies is the most common ways to extract that information when you visit a website or visit a service, use a service. That's why like all the modern websites coming with a whole bunch of cookie sets. Even with like when you load a video, that's a lot of cookies embedded in those videos. We all know that YouTube is notorious with the cookies. Even with the non-cookie version, you use a cookie to track you, to say that you're non-cookie users. So GDPR doesn't allow forced consent. So it means like these websites cannot proactively track you with those cookies. They need to get your consent before they can track you. But how to get your consent? There's multiple ways to trick you into giving consent. So you can see a lot of double negative terms like do not use. There's a really interesting game that created by a very, very genius designer, which probably Amira, you can share or later after the workshop as a fun thing, which is like can you defeat all the traps in those cookie bars? Different languages, different buttons, all those things trick you into giving them the consent. Okay, I give you the consent to track me. Even though sometimes you click do not track, deactivate, deactivate. The final thing is not the confirmation. The final thing is keep the current setting. And there's a very tiny thing is like confirm your choices, but keep the current setting is they still have the trackings. So this is one very famous or like a common example of the
I know GDPR and CCPA are definitely places we can look, and I guarantee we will send out that fun game. I just know it's overwhelming and I'm going to lose you all at once right now. So be sure to tune in for that. Clearly, Sage and I can talk about dark patterns for so long. We are revved up about it. And I'm so happy we have such a supportive community who is also revved up with us and willing to take these actions. But I do want to respect and honor our time. So I am going to quickly take us through the wrap up before we all jump for our next time. So the number one thing would be report a dark pattern. You now have the link to the dark pattern tip line, and we would love for you to get in there. You have all shared so many examples with us, and those belong in the dark pattern tip line. So let us know and let us map and take this research and understanding so we can create more reports and push for better policy reform on dark patterns. We will be sending an email with the links, the resources, fun games, and recording. So be sure to look out for that. Tell us what you want to see in future workshops. I know some of you have already done that. And then also invite others. If you are finding value in this workshop, feel free to let others know to sign up or share with them resources or links that might be helpful. And then as always, and I've dropped this into the chat as well, email us any outstanding questions. I know we answered a bunch and we talked a lot about the technicalities, but if there are things that are still murky for you, we do want to hear from you. So community@cr.consumer.org. I want to say a deep, deep thank you to you all for joining us. Thank you to my co-host Sage, and for Alan and Kimberly for providing countless support in the chats and Q&A. It has been a wild hour, and I'm so happy we were able to dig deep into something that I know Sage and I care a lot about and actually want to be able to share more information so we can be able to tackle these things sooner rather than later. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all. Really, thank you for all the questions.
Definitely. Bye all.
Bye.